everyone. This is Christina Byron. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barn. Today we're going to be talking about some of the hearing yesterday with Biden's nominee. And there's some simple questions in life that I know we would think were just irrefutable, like how many genders there are, and what is a man, what's a woman. But these are questions, I guess, that are too hard or things that you want to admit today. As a matter of fact, we talked a few days ago about how the Babylon Bee was locked out of their site, and Charlie Kirk actually was not locked out of their site, I'm sorry. Their Twitter page was like temporarily locked out, and they said you have to remove this post, and they're like, we're not removing this post. I think we mentioned it yesterday about how why and ask the question, why do they not just delete these posts? Why do they go through the you have to submit and you have to do it yourself? Because they could just delete it if they didn't like it. But they're like, we're not sacrificing truth and we're not getting rid of it. And so Charlie Kirk tweeted something that was along the same lines, and he got his account isn't gone, but Twitter didn't like that tweet either. So Tucker Carlson mentioned it, and then Twitter censored them too. So it's you can't even say this person who's obviously born a man is a man. People get really upset if you dead name someone. That's if you like Caitlyn Jenner. If I were to call Caitlyn Bruce, that would be an example of dead naming. And I guess if you go through the trouble of changing your name, I guess I know some people terribly mind. I guess I'm like, whatever, I guess you changed it, but I'm not entertaining the pronoun thing, because I mean technically you're misgendering yourself. I'm accurately defining you by your gender anyway. So we're going to be talking about some of those things, touching on some of those things. It's amazing the skew that the media has with this. I just see like these ads on Twitter, or not, but people like with stills of of the SCOTUS nominee just like flipping her hair, and they're like, this is a master class and with Black women and patience and how we have to be patient and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, it's not unreasonable that people should ask her questions regarding her record. She has answered, I think, to the best of her ability, or as well as she can, some of the decisions she's made regarding some of her cases that are controversial. I don't like the answers to them, though, and I guess we'll play little snippets of some of those today. And at this point in time, I still personally think that she's probably going to be confirmed. I do not think that she should be confirmed. And I would like Republicans to all get together and vote absolutely not, and try to sway Manchin and Sinema and some other people to not go along with it as well. But the media is really, really framing this in really, really odd ways. And I want to go through a little bit of memory lane with you guys and just talk about the weirdness of some of this, and I've touched on it before, but they're really trying to frame Holly and any GOP member who's asking questions about her record as if it's just like placating to a QAnon base. And that seems to be the thing that they really want to go with and go toward, with like if there's some kind of talk about pedophilia in the major world today, they automatically want to just throw in the word QAnon to just kind of dismiss it. And I'm like, no, that's her record. Like she should answer questions about it. She's going to have a lifetime appointment. It's not unreasonable to ask these questions, and not everyone is a QAnon conspiracy theorist. And I have a few headlines, and then that's also the White House's talking points as well. So we'll go through it. Before I jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different articles that I've written. Please check out different merchandise that I have, like the Go Get 'em. That was such a weird moment at the State of the Union there. And Trump is responding, saying, "Don't worry, I'll be back, Brandon, hold on." So you can go ahead and get that shirt. You got lots of other cool stuff, like this Free Canada shirt with the kind of like the Catching Fire book sort of logo, but instead it's their maple leaf. I got some books if you guys want to check those out and get some good conservative books for your kiddos. And My Money, My Business, You Are Not That Special, got black tea mugs and all kind of stuff. So please check out stuff that I have on Black Tea News. If you like what I do here, consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Please follow me across all my different social media platforms on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. All my links are like in the descriptions if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook. So make sure you follow me all across the platforms. You go to the website, drop in your email so you make sure you're getting notifications and so on. And if you're watching live, like if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I think there is definitely a notification bell on YouTube. But you should be able to set it so you get notifications when I go live. I was at an event yesterday and someone's like, "I never know, they don't get the notifications. I never see your videos, or they see them scarcely." I'm like, you should be able to hit notifications. And I don't know why social media feels like, hey, I don't know if you really want to see this thing, even though you're following the page or you're subscribed to this person, but we don't like them, I guess, enough. So we don't want to push their content forward. So make sure that if you do enjoy that you are hitting those notification bells. So, and I also do want to thank Brighter Michigan PEC. I am in their studio today, and they put on a lovely event last night with economist Stephen Moore. I got to meet him yesterday, and he asked me, what I did, and I told him about Black Tea News, and he asked, like, well, what are we going to do to win? And I said, we got to break through the media barrier. And so that is really my huge concern. And I was talking to other activists last night. I think like a lot of the school board stuff with the CRT, which they keep rebranding as diversity, equity, inclusion, and then also the reaction that the left has to bills like the parental rights and education bill. That's really alarming. It's really alarming, really disturbing. And I think it's a hill they're going to die on, and they're going to get shellacked if that's the route that they want to go. Maybe they'll figure out that they've made a grave mistake and do a 180 like they tried to do with some of the defund police stuff. But it is creepy. It is creepy and weird the way that the media and other people have really gone along with it. So anyway, we need to break through the media barrier, because they have a lot of propaganda surrounding a lot of these different issues. So anyway, you guys know that I like to start off with something funny. And so since we're going back through memory lane, I guess with these confirmation hearings a bit, someone took the Kavanaugh hearing and superimposed it over like one of those slides that the Democrat senators had, and just to show you guys how ridiculous it was back then with the boofing questions.
Have you, I don't know if it's boofed or boofed, how do you pronounce that?
That refers to flatulence. We were 16.
Okay. And so when your friend Mark Judge said put the same thing in his yearbook page back to you, he had the same meaning. It was flatulence.
I don't know what he did, but that's my recollection. We want to talk about flatulence at age 16 on a yearbook page. I'm game.
Yeah. So people keep mentioning the Kavanaugh hearing and trying to compare Kavanaugh's situation to this hearing. And it's like, guys, you guys are really trying to destroy his life. And they're like, "Oh, she's so calm and cool, collected." Unlike Kavanaugh, I'm like, you accuse the man of sexual assault. Like, how is he not supposed to be upset? And that also really bothered me at the time. There, as if his outrage to the accusation, they acted as if that were proof of the slanderous lies that they told about him. I mean, his wife's crying. Is like everyone's upset because of this ridiculous lie that there's no evidence for. As there's no time, there's no date, there's no location. Everyone involved denied it, and it goes deeper than that about just how absolutely false it was. But people are upset that people are asking questions about Biden's nominee and her record as a judge, her actual record, things people can verify that you should be talking about, versus Kavanaugh and whether he liked beer. That was a legit question. Like, do you like beer? So, and just a little background, a lot of people in politics like drinking. So I don't drink, but man, I've been to functions. But that's in general, a lot of people do like to do that anyway. So I thought a lot of people were hypocrites asking those sort of questions, whatnot. So anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. So the first thing I want to note regarding the questions about Ms. Jackson's history and her rulings with giving more lenient sentences is that the media is trying to brand the Republicans asking these questions as QAnon people. Like the Daily Beast had this saying it's a dog whistle for QAnon types. And they say dog whistles as if, like, I always find it funny when they're like racist dog whistles. Like, you'll say something very normal, like, oh, this is a racist dog whistle. So like, okay, then how come all you folks on the left can always hear them then? Like, there was a dispute on TikTok. Someone was talking about how people need to, there's a conservative, his handles Dat Boy Victor. I've had him on my show before. And he was saying that, people mismanage their money. And that's one reason why they're, in poverty. And he said people need to stop spending hundreds of dollars on Spotify music, or they need to stop buying Jordans and Gucci's. And he said a bunch of other things. But when he got to Jordans and Gucci's, he was talking to this leftist, and they're like, who are we talking about here? And he's like, what? And he's like, that's racist. And then Victor was like, what are you talking about? He's like, because you said, so since he mentioned Jordans and Gucci's, the leftist is like, you must be talking about black people. And he's like, I'm talking about a friend of mine who blows his money on dumb stuff. So people were calling out the leftists for a while. I'm just like, you guys keep saying these are dog whistles, but you guys hear them and make everything about race. So I think that says a lot about them, those guys. But anyway, they're saying this is a dog whistle to QAnon types to bring up these things, like her record, her actual record that everyone should be looking with a fine-tooth comb. Now, whether you think there's no there is another issue, but it's worth talking about as she's a younger woman on the, as far as politics age goes, and she's going to have a lifetime appointment and is going to be able to rule on some things that can dramatically impact the country. So it's not unreasonable to talk about the record, but if you talk about these things, how she actually ruled and did give more lenient sentences to people who were trafficking in child pornography, then that's a QAnon dog whistle. Or maybe it's just the truth. It's blatantly the truth. Now you can say, well, she had good reasoning or the context or what, you can justify however you want to, but it is the truth. And him mentioning her record should not be all crazy conspiracy theory, because it's just a fact. Now, will there be some QAnon people looking at that stuff? Why wouldn't they, I guess? But why wouldn't we all be asking questions? Now, maybe you don't think it's a big deal. I keep saying I'm weirded out by it. I don't like it. I absolutely don't like it. But just to brush it off as if it's crazy town? Why? Why would you think that? And that's just not the Daily Beast, the despicable people, the Daily Beast who think like that. Here's the deputy press secretary for the White House also saying it's embarrassing QAnon signaling smear has been fact-checked by Washington Post, New York Times, etc., blah, blah, blah. And the fact checks don't deny that she did those things. They just are like, oh, there's some context missing. It's like, okay, so it sounds like you really want to write an opinion piece, but the facts are in that she did give more lenient sentences. to people looking at child pornography or had access to it than what is recommended. Just the fact. So I don't care what the fact checkers say. Those are all like activists anyway who try to use the power of their fact checkers to ding you down. So if you write something accurate but they don't like it, they want to say it's missing context, so it's like false, so social media and everyone can have an excuse to start kind of rate you down and sort of bury you in some kind of algorithm. I've got flagged by fact checkers because they're like, well, this thing isn't true. And I'm like, I didn't even say that. What I said has nothing to do with what you wrote. So why am I flagged for misinformation? So these folks are nutty. So those are two examples. Got the White House with their talking points like, oh, this is QAnon stuff. And there's also New York Times and other folks who were saying this is like QAnon signaling. So I mentioned this before, but I think it's weird that anything regarding when people want to talk about pedophilia, that they do want to go that route with QAnon. Because I have heard people who were associated with QAnon and some of the stuff they were into, some of the stuff they believed, some of the stuff was weird. Like I heard like Trump Pence, like trumpets, like trumpet sounding like like biblical end of days kind of stuff. I'm like, that's a stretch. There's some weird stuff that they're into, but when Trump was president, the press were like, will you denounce QAnon? They're saying that you're going to save the world from the pedophiles or whatever. And he's like, I didn't like, that sounds like a nice thing. Doesn't that sound like a nice thing? That like that was Trump's reaction to those kind of questions. But that was the thing that every time I like saw like an article trending or people talking about it, was always the focus. Like QAnon is obsessed with pedophilia and in the world in high places. And I'm like, are you guys just trying to associate every kind of question about that as just a conspiracy theory? And I mentioned this before when the Netflix movie Cuties came out and there was outrage about it. And if you guys recall the posters or if you recall any of the footage that was circulating around or commentary around the movie Cuties, and that was to simplify the outrage of it was a movie about a girl it was like a kind of coming of age sort of story, and she joined like a dancing twerking crew, and there's more to the story than that, I will say, but Netflix had a pretty like provocative sort of poster, and there's some things in there that was content I think that was too mature for the actress, the main lead, and they auditioned a lot of kids for that role, so I'm just like, ugh, things that make you go blue. So I have written about that on blacktnews.com, but they were associating everyone who was like having outrage with that as if it was like just a QAnon outrage thing, and people were like, no, I'm left wing and this is weird. But that's what the media wanted to do. Like the Access media, they were obsessed with trying to paint any outrage to how our kids are sexualized and mainstreaming the sexualization of children as a wacko conspiracy thing. So I think that's weird. I think that's weird. And I did tweet and stretch a little bit with my response to Andrew Bates. I said the White House dismisses their SCOTUS nominee's record on child porn cases and calls Florida's parental rights bill, which is meant to protect children, disgusting. I just think we live in interesting times. And I am concerned about, I don't know how deep some of this stuff goes. There are so many people who were associated with Epstein and his lady friend, did get, convicted. But what about all of her clients? And I mentioned the other day about, I thought it was weird that Bill Clinton still got to speak at the DNC convention after there are pictures of him with an alleged sex slave of Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, and it's weird how many times he came to the White House when Bill Clinton was in office. There's some weird stuff going on. And again, I don't think it's weird to ask about Miss Jackson's record regarding this stuff. And some of the fact checkers have said stuff like, well, there's a lot of judges that feel in the same sort of vein that she does as far as the sentencing. And someone had a headline that was explaining that, and then they had a GIF from the show The Good Place, and they're like, that makes it so much worse, or don't you know that makes it so much worse that there's so many other people who feel that similar sort of way. So I'm going to play a clip of CNN talking, and Tubin talking about the QAnon situation too. And again, Tubin should not be discussing any of this stuff, this topic. If I was CNN, if I was Tubin, I'd be like, hey, bro, we need to get like another analyst for this segment, because I cannot talk about porn and anything related to being a sexual predator. That is just too ironic. And if you're not familiar, he's the one who was diddling himself on a Zoom call and got suspended by CNN, not fired. He got suspended by CNN, and he also slept with a coworker's child, I believe it was, and impregnated them, and wanted them to get an abortion. So that's the kind of dude he is.
So, Jeffrey, what's your reaction to this exchange? Republican Senator Josh Hawley trying to paint Judge Jackson as somehow sympathetic to child porn offenders.
I mean, this was really extraordinary. You have a judge here who's been on the bench for 10 years almost, and we had the entire half hour of Senator Hawley's question about a single case where he got to recite the grisly details of and say pedophilia over and over again. This is about appealing to the QAnon audience, this cult that is a big presence in Republican Party politics now, that is where Senator Hawley is trying to ingratiate himself with that group and run for president with their support. This has very little to do with Judge Jackson, who, as has come out throughout the hearing today, is
so.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So someone else tweeted, and I just said this, but I don't know. Maybe the deviant who knocked up his colleague's daughter, pressured her to get an abortion, and masturbated on a Zoom is not the best analyst to critique whether pedophiles got light sentences. I agree with that. I agree with that. And CNN has also had issues as well with other sexual situations. So, but I guess on the flip side, if you were CNN, why wouldn't you want to just bury all that information, that recent information, and just accuse everyone you don't like of being a conspiracy QAnon nut? Why wouldn't you do that? I guess. Here's her explaining a little bit about the guidelines to the child pornography.
As you said, the guideline was based originally on a statutory scheme and on directives, specific directives by Congress at a time in which more serious child pornography offenders were identified based on the volume, based on the number of photographs that they received in the mail. And that made total sense before, when we didn't have the internet, when we didn't have distribution. But the way that the guideline is now structured, based on that set of circumstances, is leading to extreme disparities in the system, because it's so easy for people to get volumes of this kind of material now by computers. So it's not doing the work of differentiating who is a more serious offender in the way that it used to. So the commission has taken that into account, and perhaps even more importantly, courts are adjusting their sentences in order to account for the changed circumstances, but it says nothing about the court's view of the seriousness of this offense.
So that's her explanation. So she explained it. I don't personally think that's a great explanation, because I'm just like, so you think because it was harder for people to get access to all that stuff through the mail, so they would be, I guess, a more serious, devoted sort of pedo in the past to get their porn. But I guess nowadays they're like, you can be more of a casual porner to get your kitty porn. So she's like, it doesn't distinguish how serious it is with the sentencing because the access is so easy now. I think the fact that you can get it more readily available should be more cause for panic and alarm. So I don't think that's a good excuse or good and they say other judges have done similar things, or she's making that case, and in New York Times other people are making that case. Again, I don't necessarily think that that's a good thing. Their sort of line, their sort of reasoning, and I don't know, maybe someone else can explain it away, but I don't think that makes anyone look good. Trying to say, well, it was just harder to get porn back then, and it's so much easier to do it now, so we got to make the sentences lighter because they can just do so much more now. That's not computing with me. It's not computing. Definitely not computing. Because you can have more victims and more children who are victimized. Because there's people, even on, like, I've read in the past, some of these sites, and they'll have minors on it, and they'll ask to take it down, and that stuff will get re-uploaded again and again and again. There's this one pastor on TikTok who was big in the porn industry, and he ended up converting. Obviously, he's a pastor, but I guess nowadays maybe it's not so obvious. But it stopped all that stuff, But he talks about the industry, and he's like, there's people who are, getting it up to people who they know who have killed themselves coming out of this industry. It's just really perverse. So the fact that it's easier to get, I don't think should be like the reason why they're like, oh yeah, that's why I didn't follow the suggested guidelines. I don't think that's a great excuse. Maybe you guys have a different opinion. I definitely think this is all very strange. I think it's all very strange, and the way that the media wants to frame it, like, clearly she's not going to recuse herself. Clearly, they're still going to really push to get her through it. And at this point in time, I think it's likely that she's going to get through. But if Republicans are going this route and they're raising a stink about it, I hope they are trying to go nuclear with tanking it. I think, but not tanking them, but taking her. But there's other Republicans I've heard mumblings about how they don't like the route that Ted Cruz and other folks are like Holly and stuff are going. So I don't know what to say about this besides I think it's gross and weird and perverted, and she's explaining things. I'll give her that. And that's what she should be doing, and people should be questioning her record, and she's giving some answers on some things, but I don't think they're good answers, and I think we should question her discernment on a lot of things. And we can go on and explain some other things that raise some questions, like she was asked, where does life begin? So let's take a look at that.
When does life begin, in your opinion?
Senator, I don't know.
Ma'am?
I don't know.
I don't know. And granted, a lot of people don't know. If you every day, every night, several lives going at once on TikTok, people debating abortion, and those are the lives in the political world that get like the most eyes on them for whatever reason. Like the only time I see like hundreds of people watching is when people are debating abortion, and probably majority of people in the chats or whatever are young girls who are too young, I think, to even be having sex, who are like so passionate about it. So it's a little weary on the mind, I think. But a lot of those people don't know where life begins, and they deny any sort of biological science. Now the science is that it's a life at conception. That is the origin, the point of life. Obviously, Christopher Hitchens, for all of you people out there who be like, "Oh, you darn Christians!" Chris, he said that feminists have a contempt for science, because like, what other point can there be for when it begins? Now the question is when. It's not up for debate when it is a life. I mean, you can debate it if you want to, but it's definitely a life biologically. The question is, when does it have the right to life? I think obviously when it's alive and it's a human being. So that's the debate. So people want to say, is it sentient? Is it this and is that? I don't think that was a hard question. I understand. Some people are saying, well, there's going to be cases of Roe v. Wade and other kind of stuff that'll come, and she shouldn't answer those kinds of questions because that could signal how she could vote in a case, and she might have to recuse herself, and it's not appropriate. And there's other people who have dodged kind of stuff like that. Okay, but she didn't dodge. That wasn't a non-answer of. This is a debate that's highly contested, and as someone who may make rulings about abortion, I don't want to say that's not what she said. He said, "Where does life begin?" And she was like, "I don't know." And it reminds me of Obama's "It's above my pay grade," and it's just a cop out of people not wanting to distinguish and recognize when that life begins, because it just creates too many sticky problems for everyone else. So so many pro-choice people will die on really, really crazy hills, and I understand people who make the emotional pills about really, really heartbreaking stories, and they'll use those to justify everyone else who wants to have one, even like the ones who do abortions out of spite because they cheated on their boyfriend and the boyfriend found out, and which I've heard of that happening multiple times. So I'm not making that up. But the people who are like, nah, it's just a glob of goo, and like, come on. That's just, it's not scientifically accurate. So she answered the question. She said, I don't know. So that was interesting. Not as interesting though as her exchange with Marsha Blackburn regarding what is a woman.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
I'm not a biologist, so I can't know what a woman is, even though she knows she's a woman. She knows her mom's a woman. Like, you don't know. You can't say. You can't ponder. And again, people are saying they're trying to. I was on a friend's thread, and they had some liberals in their comments like they're trying to trip her up and answer something that's unconstitutional. He's like, how is it unconstitutional to mention what's a woman or not? And people are like, well, she don't want to say that because of if she has to rule on something. That's not what she did either. If she was concerned about Title 7 or 9 or cases that may come, because it is hotly contested with stuff like the Florida bill or bills in Texas, and you had the Leah Thomas and other cases like that with people racing and competing in women's sports, or you have stuff in men who are going to women's prisons because that's how they identify. You're going to see probably a lot of things make their way up in the courts and stuff. So if she wanted to say, I don't want to comment because of these cases, Republicans, I think, still would have raised a fuss about it, but that would have been a more reasonable response, because she gave an answer. She said, I'm not a biologist. So that seems like it's just, first of all, they should have really had a prep for that. If they didn't, that's really, really awful, and just goes to show you just how incompetent everyone is, I guess. But to say I'm not a biologist, well, so you are kind of conceding that it is a question of biology, right? So if it is a question of biology, we know what a man is and what a woman is. You can't change your DNA, can't change your chromosomes. It's pretty much baked in the cake. Female is a woman is a female, okay? And a man is male. And I'm aware that sex and gender are two different words, but again, sex and gender are intertwined and meaningless without the other. You can go to blacktnews.com. I've written articles explaining that more thoroughly, my thoughts on it, and even how I think activists really concede that point as well, especially because they're trying to really merge them and intrude on areas where it's absolutely biological. Like, if you have a period, that is biological. So why are you trying to say people with periods? Why are you trying to say stuff like people who are pregnant? Those are biological things that you cannot identify your way into, but you're trying to mix it out into other stuff because there's value in those biological things. And what's really what they want is buy-in, okay? They need buy-in for their position to be legitimate or seen as legitimate. It won't be legitimate. So she's kind of conceding the point, but the activism within her won't allow her to say a woman is a female. A woman is someone with this kind of chromosomes. It won't allow her to just flat out say that. So she's gonna be like, I'm not a biologist. Well, what's the biology, ma'am? You never took one of those classes? Like, on your way up to Harvard, you just never stumbled through a biology class at all? Ever? You didn't watch like Bill Nye back in the day before they edited out the video, the episode when they talked about chromosomes? Because they did when they put on Netflix. They were like, oh shoot, we were just talking about science in the past, and now we got to go woke. So Abigail Schreier and other people were just talking about this moment, and they're like, this doesn't bode well for like how she may be ruling or whatever in the future as far as cases regarding protecting women's spaces. So if Republicans don't want to jump on her record as far as the lighter sentences for the kiddie porn, isn't the fact that she can't just talk about like a basic truth, like a red flag about what is a man and a woman? And here's another thing. If people just say it's a construct as well, and it doesn't matter who's a man and a woman, anyone can be a man and a woman. Like if Clarence Thomas today decided, hey, you know what, I'm a woman now. So he's the first Black woman on the bench. And her being named second, that would still be impressive being second, but it's not as important as being first. So is there value in being a woman or is there not? Because people are all excited because she'll be the first Black woman, but is there value in being a woman or not? And you say, well, her experience as a Black woman, and et cetera, and how hard it's been to get here. And that's how they're talking about like her, she's got to be patient. Black women have gone through this, and this is why it's needed, or even why it's good that Biden decided to play segregation a bit and single out everybody else and discriminate against everybody else to get her here. Like, people have argued that it's a good thing for our American process. Okay, but why? If it doesn't mean anything to be a woman. And by the way, CRT like states genders, I mean that race is a construct too. So you're talking about a black woman. Race is a construct and gender is a construct. So where's the value in this? Like people know deep down there is value, and they argue that there's different experiences that people will have because she's black and because she's a woman. People complain about the patriarchy all the time. You're going to tell me that women do not have unique experiences? That doesn't make any sense. So if you can't say what is a woman, what is a man, then what is it worth? If there's no value in it, and there's no value in it if it's interchangeable, if it's so darn fluid. So tell me what's it worth. Someone said Clarence Thomas should do that. People were said that Trump should have declared that he was a woman so he can be the first female president too. Take another thing from Hillary Clinton. Well, she'll never be the first female president, obviously, but by the way, I don't think Kamala will be either, man. There's always been some tea between them, like Biden and Kamala. But there was some drama that came out. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow, but some juicy stuff about her and her behavior and her attitudes. Like she was so mad with that cover of was it Vogue where she had the Chucks on. She's like, "Will they treat any other world leader like this?" It's like, do you not wear Chucks? Or did you not put them on your feet? And then it came out that Jill Biden allegedly was upset that Kamala was picked because she's like, out of all the people they could have picked, like why pick the one who attacked Joe? And I'm like, that's valid. That's valid. Because it doesn't make sense. And she's so awful. And she's always been awful. And she's tremendously awful. We played yesterday her like video about the passage of time, which was just such word salad. She's so bad at it. But we'll go into more of that tomorrow. I did want to mention this CRT video as well, because she said she didn't learn about CRT, but then she ended up, Ted Cruz got her in a gotcha moment.
But I've never studied critical race theory and I've never used it. It doesn't come up in the work that I do as a judge.
So with respect, I find that a curious statement because you gave a speech in April of 2015 at the University of Chicago in which you described the job you do as a judge. And you said sentencing is just plain interesting because it melds together myriad types of law, criminal law, and of course constitutional law, critical race theory. So you described in a speech to a law school what you were doing as critical race theory. And so I guess I would ask, what did you mean by that when you gave that speech?
With respect, Senator, the quote that you are mentioning there was about sentencing policy. It was not about sentencing. I was talking about the policy determinations of bodies like the Sentencing Commission when they look at a laundry list of various academic subjects as they consider what the policy should be.
Okay, but you were vice chair of the Sentencing Commission, so let me ask again, what did you mean by, because that was an official responsibility of yours, what did you mean by what you were doing was critical race?
What I meant was that there are a number of, that slide does not show the entire laundry list of different academic disciplines that I said relate to sentencing policy, but none of that relates to what I do as a judge.
So does she know what it is, or does she not know what it is? She just throwing out words, or what? And did you notice when she talked about, when I played before in the video, when she's talking about how they were looking at the laws in regard to how she believes the sentencing has changed, because in the past people had to mail in their porn and now they can just get it on the internet, and now it's causing discrepancies. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, Are you talking about people who are poor? Are you talking about there's more people who are black who are using the internet to get porn and it's creating more people who are locked up of different colors and stuff? Because if that's what you're talking about, I just want people to look at the law and say, are people guilty? Did they do this crime? Are they personally guilty? I mean, people want to look at systems and group so many people together, and I'm just like, but did they do it though? So that was a good gotcha moment. Cruz whipping out the big board, like, because you said this about critical race theory. So I find it hard to believe that she doesn't apply that sort of thinking or ideology into when she decides when she's going to give a more lenient sentence and so on. So yeah. So she's had a busy day, but of course the press are just like GOP bad, GOP QAnon, GOP sick, GOP wants revenge for Kavanaugh, GOP blah blah blah. And the Kavanaugh thing is silly to me as far as wanting revenge or whatnot. Try to frame it like I mean they radicalized Lindsey Graham because he didn't see how evil these people were until that moment, I guess. And people will never forget. I hope people don't forget about how the media and the Democrats treated Brett Kavanaugh. But again, going forward at the beginning of this process is like they're trading Breyer for Jackson. It's one lib for another. And the media is going to weaponize her race. The media is going to weaponize their gender. Republicans are in a position where they're going to just probably shellac them in midterms anyway. There's not much benefit, I guess, for them going buck wild on some of these kind of questionings. So if people think they're just out for blood for their, I don't know, base or whatever, at the end of the day, I don't think, and they're not even going that ferocious, honestly, given the nature and the content of some of the stuff that they're talking about. Like I mean, Cory Booker, Bug-Eyed Booker, and Kamala, and some of the folks, the questions that they would ask. Even though the nature of some of the questions and stuff are kind of more on the heinous side, they're handling it, or their line of questioning is it's very chill, even regardless of what they're talking about. I mean, granted we have COVID and stuff, but now the world's changed a lot, I guess. But you had all these guests who would come in with the Kavanaugh stuff and interrupting in protest, and when was the beating on the doors? Was that during Gorsuch? I think it might have been Gorsuch, but the left has been really crazy in the past about some of this stuff, and just simply asking Jackson about her record is not out of the ordinary. But they want to paint you as a QAnon person, and again, I think that's weird. I think that's creepy. And I mentioned at the top of the hour that, Babylon Bee on Twitter, by the way, and we've talked about this in the past. They tweeted out something that that Twitter didn't like. They said was hate speech, and they tweeted out the Babylon Bee's Man of the Year was Rachel Levin, and they suspended their account. They said, you got to delete your tweet, and they're like, we're not deleting anything. Truth is not hate speech. If the cost of telling the truth is our loss of our Twitter account, then so be it. And then Charlie Kirk got slapped on the wrist because Richard Levin. So that's considered dead naming. When you say someone's name and then they changed it and they transition and stuff. Spent 54 years of his life as a man. He had a wife and a family. He transitioned to being a man in 2011. Joe Biden appointed Levin to be a 4-star admiral, and now USA Today has named Rachel Levin as a Woman of the Year. Where are the feminists? So they ain't like that either. And then Tucker Carlson pointed out that they said things that were true, and then they censored Tucker Carlson. So they are really going in at people for saying things that are just objectively true. It's just objectively true. Is it just hateful to say things people don't like? Because if the shoe's on the other foot, there's a lot of things that people on the left say that's just like, that are lies. They're just slanderous lies, but they still have their accounts. They still have their accounts for spreading vicious, malicious misinformation. But you can't say something that's like remarkably true. That's the world we're living in. But I would like to think, and from my experience, Twitter is not real life. Twitter would like to make it real life, I'm sure. All these social media giants, and I think that is their goal, that is their aim, to really transform the world. And they did a heck of a job in 2020, moving the needle with the election. But there's still normal people that are like, you know what? I don't want my daughter to swim or race against a boy who's had all this testosterone throughout their body. I don't care if they're on some hormone blockers now or they're on some estrogen and they can't run as fast as all the other dudes. And if they were a prize athlete before, they probably wouldn't bother the transition either, if they could compete at a high athletic level with other men. I wouldn't think they'd want to just flip over if they were that stellar in the men's field. If Leah wasn't number 400th, I would assume would have been number one if, as a man, if that's what Leah could have done. But he could be number one in the women's field. So I'm not saying he doesn't actually have gender dysphoria. But I think he's a narcissist that found an opportunity. That's some real toxic masculinity right there. And there are feminists who are upset about it. But they do feel, there was an article about how feminists feel like they're politically homeless because it's gone too far on the side of the left. We're still here over here. We can have conversations. You're going to have to actually look at data about the wage gap and things like that, but we can come to an understanding and at least fight for basic truths. Because the other side doesn't want to believe in them. They just want to shut you down. So anyway, that is the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you live in some states where you can sway your senators, please make some phone calls. Please make a stink about it. Talk to your state parties and so on, and make sure that you're calling and that I hope you guys are seeing ads and stuff, but I don't know outside of kind of my social media bubble how like things are on the ground as far as this hearing is. So gosh, I don't want her to be confirmed. I'm not optimistic that she will be stopped though. Just to give it to you straight. I hate to be the so pessimistic, but I think that's just kind of where we're at with the political climate. And there's just some Republicans that are signaling that they're not into the line of questioning, but I think it's valid, and I don't like her answers. They're not acceptable to me. But anyway, please make sure you guys visit blacktnews.com. Check out the content that I have on the website. Make sure you guys are checking out different merchandise, like the GOAT hoodies and the GOAT t-shirts. And I do have those in multiple colors. If you guys want to check that out, check out the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of his racist history on the back. Some of it, because there's like more that has popped out. But yeah, you can get this shirt. Also, I'm not the victim you're looking for. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you follow me across all my social media platforms on Facebook, on YouTube, and Instagram, on TikTok. All my handles are at Black T News, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea, and it's black like the color, tea like the drink, and then news. God bless you guys.